Today we're looking at notes V-2, trig proofs, day 2. So on number 1, we want to prove that cosecant squared of x minus 1 all over cosine of x is equal to cotangent of x cosecant of x. So notice what you have on the right here, cotangent of x cosecant of x. So the first thing I notice when I'm going to try this on my own, okay, would be that this cosecant squared x minus 1 could be equal to cotangent squared of x from the Pythagorean property number 3. So I'm going to substitute this here for cotangent squared of x over cosine of x, and again I did that using Pythagorean property number 3. Okay, so that equals, of course I'm going to drag down my right side, cotangent of x times cosecant of x, CSC of x. So then I'm going to expand because I have a squared, so I'm going to expand so that cotan squared of x is going to become cotangent x times cotangent x times 1 over cosine of x. Okay, and that should equal cotangent of x cosecant of x. So I did that from, that was step 1, that was step 2. I did that from expanding. Now I'm going to use my quotient property number 2. Quotient property number 2, because cotangent is equal to cosine over sine, and I'm thinking, oh, that'll help me because I can get rid of these cosines. Now in my final answer I have a cotangent here, so I'm going to leave that guy alone. Anyway, I only have one cosine to simplify with, so I'm going to leave this one alone. I'm going to change this using my, again, quotient property number 2 to cosine of x over sine of x times 1 over cosine of x. And now you can clearly see why we thought to do that, because that and that will simplify, and so that's pretty much your next step, simplify. Okay, so I'm going to simplify, and this is going to be cotangent of x, so I'm getting close because I have cotangent of x, and then 1 times 1 over sine of x should equal cotangent of x cosecant of x. And then of course think about what 1 over sine of x is. So 1 over sine of x from your knowledge and from the reciprocal property number 2, reciprocal property number 2, you know that 1 over sine of x is cosecant of x. So cotangent of x, cosecant of x, and check and check. So you're done with number 1. So then let's try another problem, number 2. So 1 plus sine of b times 1 minus sine of b should equal cosine squared of b. Okay, so your first step as you look at that is let's FOIL. Let's FOIL and see what that gets us. Okay, so go back to what I've told y'all before recently. Here recently we talked about this problem. It was on your recent notes. X plus 5 times x minus 5. You should know that that FOILs back to x squared minus 25 because x plus 5, x minus 5. That's going backwards from a difference of squares. So this is similar here. You've got 1 plus sine b, 1 minus sine b. So if you FOIL that, of course, you're going to have 1 squared is 1, and then minus sine squared b, okay? So then, from there, when you FOIL, you should notice this is a Pythagorean property number 1. If you had 1 minus sine squared of b, that would be equal to cosine squared of x. So cosine squared of b. So this is our Pythagorean property, and so it equals cosine squared of b, not x, since we're using b, equals cosine squared of b. So check and check. So we're done with number 2 already. Okay, so let's look at number 3. Number 3, we have tangent of x plus 1, so the quantity tangent of x plus 1 squared should equal secant squared of x plus 2 tan x. Okay, so of course you're first going to expand, because this means tan x plus 1 times tan x plus 1. So then you're going to FOIL, so expand first, FOIL second, and I'm getting carried away because I love this stuff so much, so I'm forgetting to drag down my right side. So then when I FOIL this, I'm going to have tan squared x, tan x times tan x is tan squared x, tan x times 1 and tan x times 1 is going to give me 2 tan x. Okay, and then 1 times 1, of course, is 1. So we FOILed, and that should equal secant squared x plus 2 tan x. Well, look at that. I want to rearrange. So my next step is going to be rearrange, because look, we're close. We're real close. This 2 tan x needs to go in the back. So I'm going to put tan squared x plus 1, I'm just moving this over, plus 2 tan x. Okay, so I just moved the 1 over to be behind the tan squared x, and I moved the 2 tan x in the back like it is here. So secant squared x plus 2 tan x. So now, hopefully you recognize this as one of your Pythagorean properties. Pythagorean property number 2. Okay, states that tan squared x plus 1 is equal to secant squared x. So this would be secant squared x plus 2 tan x. Just dragging that down, equals secant squared x plus 2 tan x. You know, those pluses and those t's for the tans, they get kind of messy, don't they? All right, so number 3. Cool beans. We're done with that one. We only have one more to go. So, get my piece of paper here. Number 4. Cosine 4x minus sine to the 4th x should equal 1 minus 2 sine squared x. Okay, so let's pause a moment. All right, so difference of squares. That's what I noticed this is. This is a difference of squares again. So difference of squares. And real quick, up high, I want you to think about if you had something like x to the 4th minus y to the 4th. That would be x squared plus y squared and x squared minus y squared. You found mommy. Okay, so that's similar to this here. Okay, so then this would turn into cosine squared x plus sine squared x, cosine squared x minus sine squared x. And that should equal 1 minus 2 sine squared x. Okay, so we broke this up using difference of squares. And then this, cosine squared x plus sine squared x, this is a, oops, I don't want to use that color. This is a Pythagorean property. So Pythagorean property number 1 is that cosine squared x plus sine squared x equals 1. So this is like 1 times cosine squared x minus sine squared x should equal 1 minus 2 sine squared x. Okay, so that's like 1 times this. So of course 1 times this is just this. And then what I noticed, because I want 2 sine squared x's, is I'm thinking, well, okay, so if I manipulate this to just be cosine squared x equals, then it'd be 1 minus sine squared x. So I'm going to replace this again using that Pythagorean property number 1. Okay, using that Pythagorean property number 1, I'm replacing cosine squared x with 1 minus sine squared x. That's what I'm replacing that with. And then dragging this down, minus sine squared x. So replacing that with my Pythagorean property. Remember that kind of quote-unquote went away because 1 times this is just this. And that equals 1 minus 2 sine squared x. Well, yeah, it does. Okay, CLT. Collect like terms. All right, so this is 1 minus 2. I've got 2 of these. Sine squared x equals 1 minus 2 sine squared x. That's it for today.